Hey everybody. The other day I was talking to a friend trying to give them some well wishes because they were facing something not pleasant. Um, and I told them, I sincerely wish for you the peace that passes understanding. And I know that that person got the reference because they're also a believer. Um, but I wanted to talk a little more about that for people that aren't um, accustomed or used to that saying. Biblically, they say Jesus brings you the peace that passes understanding, meaning it surpasses, meaning you cannot understand it. It's just there. You ever have those times? You hear the stories about the moms with the kids stuck in the car and they yanked the damn door off. That's part of that because they were able to do something that they shouldn't have been able to do to bring peace, ultimate peace to their lives, to save their child. Right? When you go through something horrible, horrific, something you don't want to see, something traumatizing, but you're able to not only survive it, but still not succumb to a hardened heart, that is the peace that passes understanding. Because again, you don't understand how you're able to do it, you just do. That's when the Holy Spirit comes in and takes over and gets you through it. That's when God touches you and says, it's all right, we're going to get through this. That's how that works. And it's ironic because, along with that conversation, pastor lately at church has been talking a lot about the promises of God. And I actually happen to have a whole, slew of collections of books of promises from God, right? And I like to flip through these sometimes to get reminders. I want to give 4 of them to you now. I promise they're all short, none of them are super long. But I want to give you 4 verses that talk about experiencing fear. And it's because I'm taking this somewhere. All right, so just bear with me, please. Just hear it out. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Romans chapter 8, verse 15. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the spirit of adoption by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. All right, the other one's on a different page. Maybe the next page? No. Oh. Psalm 31:24. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart, all you who hope in the Lord. Pastor mentions a lot of times, I've never counted, so I can't say the accuracy, but it sounds about right. He says that in the Bible, it says about 365 times something along the lines of do not be afraid, do not worry, do not be anxious. Right? That means 1 for every day of the year. Think about that. Let that sink in. So why are we letting our lives be controlled by fear? We fear what other people think of us. We fear what happens if we stand up against something that isn't right. We're afraid to, not accept the unacceptable. Why? I need people to think about that. Why are people afraid to go inwards? Why are people afraid to get to know themselves? Why are people afraid to fix themselves? Why all the fear? And this is something I need people to seriously think about. It's a genuine question. Why are we so afraid of everything that would be good for us? Make it make sense. I mean, I can, because it's by design. It's through indoctrination. It's on purpose. It's to it's part of psychological warfare to control society. And I know a lot of you think, tinfoil hat time. Think what you want, but again, my favorite saying is make it make sense. Now, doesn't that make it make sense? It does, doesn't it? And do you have a counter offer that's equally as sensical? No, because you don't want it to make sense, because again, you are afraid of what it means to admit that that's the case. You are afraid that it would mean you would have to stand up for yourself. Prove me wrong. I have, observed society enough that there's not even a question in my mind that that is the absolute case. Everybody's afraid of what will happen if they do something differently than the rest of the world. Everyone's afraid to genuinely be themselves, to be authentic. Everybody wants to conform and be like everybody else. That's friggin' boring. That is not how God designed us. We are insulting the gift of being made in God's image by trying to be cookie cutters of one another. Let that sink in, because that's exactly what that is. One of my favorite, and I won't go through it because it's long, but feel free to look it up yourself. It's Psalm 139. All right, if you can get your hands on a Bible, go to Psalm 139. That is one of my favorites. Because that talks about how much detail God knows. He knows every hair on your head. And that is individually every person on this planet. There's roughly around 8 billion people on the planet. Think about that. I'm lucky if I can remember details of 8 people, let alone 8 billion. And again, this goes back to things that pass our understanding. We do not have the mind of God. We will never understand God. But that doesn't mean that we don't try, that we don't, nurture that relationship. Things will be revealed to us in time. When God is ready for us to know, we'll know. But that's not what this is about. That's not this experience. Here we're supposed to build our character. We're supposed to decide who we are. Let that sink in. I say it all the time that the meaning of life is to build character. You know why? Because it's the only thing you come to this world with the framework for, and the only thing you take with you when you leave. And again, your character does determine the quality of your life. It decides your interpersonal skills. It decides opportunities that'll come your way. So you need to be, very serious in thinking about these things. I see too many people turning away lately from faith. And again, it falls into that because they're being told to. And if anybody out there thinks that society is not being dumbed down for control, congratulations, it's working on you. And ignorance is bliss, so you'll never have a clue until it's too late. I genuinely envy you, because sometimes it really sucks to see it coming and not be able to, get people together to do something about it. You know what to do about it. You can't do it by yourself, and nobody else gives a shit enough. They're all too cowardly and afraid to do something. And if that's the case, you can be mad at me all you want. You can say it's unchristian-like, but you deserve what you get. And I believe that's biblical too. That you will accept what you allow. Especially evil from people, from the world. Too many people let bad things happen to them, and change them not for the better but for the worse. Because they don't take the time. They're afraid of themselves. They're afraid to sit down and do the work. They're afraid to make themselves a better person. They are afraid to face their flaws. There is nothing wrong with being wrong. It is how we learn. The only thing wrong with being wrong is if you refuse to learn and grow from it. And that's the bottom line, like dead serious. This is the life experience. This is what we're supposed to be doing. You know? I mean, you're not supposed to intentionally make mistakes, but you're human. You're flawed. We all are. And anyone who says otherwise is selling you something. You know? But that's the idea. We're supposed to make mistakes so we learn, so we do better. Again, build that character. Decide who we really want to be. Too many people are letting the world tell them who they are. Why? It just really irks me, you know, all the gifts that so many people have, all the talents, all the knowledge, all the, you know, God-given gifts. And they're squandered because everybody's trying to be like everybody else. And it just blows my mind that people are comfortable living that way. You know? I was afraid of my calling for so long. Like, my life has been a testimony that draws me to what I'm supposed to be doing, which is along the lines of this. I'm supposed to be a little further into it, but I'm waiting for the world to catch up. It's coming. And I get it. I was afraid for so long. You know what? The world finally pissed me off that I was more pissed off than afraid. You know? I finally saw enough of the true nature of the world to be like, okay, this, nope. I am not afraid to stand up. I am not afraid to say this is wrong. More people need to find that courage. Be of good faith. Really. If I can teach anybody anything at all, the most important thing is find faith. Right? It doesn't have to be in a specific religion. I'm very anti-religion, ironically. I love going to church when it's the right church, when it's the right company. I love this local church. It is everything I think a church should be. You know, they're friendly, they're open, they're welcoming. They care about the community. They try to do good by other people, whether they come to the church or not. More people need that mentality. And think about it. Why are people programmed to be so against that behavior? Why are people being taught to be so hyper independent? Why are people taught to willingly and purposefully separate themselves from one another? Like, that goes against every survival instinct that we have. Like, serious, look at our ancestors. Everybody worked together. Granted, you had, you know, different tribes or factions or whatever how you want to divide them that went against each other. But the people that worked together, like, really did things together. And we as humanity have lost that. And again, I firmly believe that it is on purpose, that it is orchestrated. And it's all about power and control. And the only way to beat it is to not let it work. The only way to beat it is to be aware of it, to ignore it, to countermeasure it. That's what we do here. That's what this whole video series and this whole project and all these talks are about. About you taking control of yourself. It's the only thing in the world you can control. So why are people so afraid? Like, seriously, think about it. A self-fulfilling prophecy. You are trying to control the world around you that is impossible to control, but you're afraid to take control of yourself to change the dynamic between the two. Make that make sense. That's one I can't answer yet. Because that makes absolutely no sense to me. Anywho, I'm going to keep this one, as close to time, about a minute over, but as close to time as possible. But that's what's been on my mind. That's what I wanted to share. Um, yeah, find faith, because faith is the only counteraction to fear. One of my favorite, okay, we are going to go over. One of my favorite isms that I brought up one night at Bible study at church was, fear is false evidence appearing real. Faith is falling all in to Him, capital H. We all know that reference. And that is genuinely the counteraction. Whenever you feel fear, the only counteraction to fear is faith. Because fear is believing in something harmful. Faith is believing in something helpful. They're literally, the counteraction to one another. You want to destroy somebody's faith? Make them full of fear. What does that sound like in the media lately? How the world's been run the last, decade or so. That not setting off any alarm bells for anybody? It should, but it doesn't. Why? Nobody's even the slightest bit curious? It just blows my mind. Anywho, as usual, take care of yourself. Try and help take care of each other. And I'll catch you in the next one.